We are joined today by Sheriff of the Norfolk County, Jared McDermott. Thank you for joining us today.
Great to be here, Michael.
So obviously in the past few months, it has been a little bit different for everyone around the country and the world living during this pandemic. Could you want to start by telling us how it's affected your office and what you guys have been doing to still get your information out to the public?
Sure. Thanks, Michael. And thanks for having me here on Norwood Cable. So yeah, the COVID-19 virus, when it came from Wuhan, China, at first, like most people, we were hearing different reports from the World Health Organization, and some people here that I work with weren't too scared. They've been here in this business of corrections for 20, 25, 30 years. And here I was appointed by Governor Baker back in 2018. So I was still getting the new guy treatment, and they said, you're worrying too much, Sheriff. Don't be a worrywart. We've seen Ebola virus, H1N1, swine flu. We've seen it all. But I was very worried, Michael, and immediately checked in with my sister, Mary, who's on the Board of Health in Dedham. And we kicked it around, and I said, we got to put some precautions and protocols in place. So how did it impact the Norfolk County Sheriff's Office? Right away, we started asking people to take seriously cleaning and sanitizing, covering their nose and their mouth if they coughed or sneezed, those types of things. But then as it grew more serious and we got close to the point in early March when the governor was ordering a state of emergency, we all took other measures. So we immediately put in place some protocols where, nobody could come into the building without having the temperature checked. We stopped all contact visits first, and then we stopped all non-contact visits. We had non-essential workers stay home. We limited the number of vendors, except for the essential ones, of course, that bring food or medical equipment or PPE, personal protective equipment, up to the House of Correction. So it certainly has impacted us a lot. People may be familiar with the Norfolk County Sheriff's Office Civil Process Division in Quincy. Sadly, many facets of our business were impacted to the point where we ended up having to furlough close to 72 people. And I did that with a heavy heart because, the last thing you want to do when millions of people are applying for unemployment is have your team members say, hey, guess what? You're going to be part of those millions applying for unemployment benefits. The only thing that took a little bit of sting out of that was the additional $1,200 from the CARES Act. So for some people that helped. I will say the unemployment office in Massachusetts has been nothing but courteous and helpful because so many of our team members were locked out of the system, having some trouble actually claiming their benefits. But Governor Baker's team and Lieutenant Governor Polito, they've got a good squad over there, and they've been helping a lot of people. The other thing that it's impacted is the courts. So as you know, the Norfolk County Sheriff's Office, we receive our inmates either through the courts or their safekeeps from places like Norwood Police Department. It impacted us because it hasn't been normal operations for quite some time at the courts. Everything's now virtual arraignments, video conferencing for any kind of hearings or motions. We also saw, Michael, the Supreme Judicial Court rule against the 14 county sheriffs and 7 district attorneys and say that due to the COVID-19 virus, they would like certain inmates that are pre-trial with underlying medical conditions, and the list was pretty extensive, to be allowed out and then turn themselves back in within 14 days after the state of emergency ends. You can imagine some of the comments I got from the inmates. A couple of them were chuckling like, yeah, good luck finding me. But we saw close to 110 inmates be released by court order. And, we weren't in favor of that at all. We've seen our inmate count go down dramatically from a high of, say, 475 to about 307 now. Many of those numbers are people that were getting out at the end of their sentence anyway. But because of the court ruling, you saw a lot of men back out on the streets who were not getting the services they needed. At least in the House of Correction, we have mental health counselors, medical, dental. We have the medication-assisted treatment because so many of our men have a dual diagnosis of mental illness and drug addiction. So because of the opioid crisis, that's really been fueling the inmate population. That's a large majority of our people have a dual diagnosis. Now you're putting them out in the street, Michael, with no services, no Narcotics Anonymous, no AA meetings to go to, no family reunification. So many of their families don't want them back because they've been heartbroken and heard the stories that they'll never steal jewelry again and they're going to kick the booze and the drugs. So this court order is basically putting men back out on the streets during a global pandemic with nowhere to live and no support services. So if you really have a heart for the inmate population and you say this is an at-risk population that needs help, this was the worst thing that could happen. In Essex County, we've seen fatal overdoses. We've seen in Worcester County, repeat offenders commit some serious assault and battery charges against them, and then come back COVID-19 positive after not having it. Now, so this petition to the courts, I think, wasn't thought out from a public safety or public health point of view, or wasn't well thought out, but it was driven by the prisoner legal services and the defense attorneys in the ACLU, and they're always looking for a way just to say, open the doors and let everybody out. Nobody should be in prison. Look, we hope that people know we take our job of rehabilitation seriously, and that's really what we strive to do here at the Norfolk County Sheriff's Office, is make people better people than they were when they came into our care and custody. We want to improve their life. We want to get them clean and sober, teach them a job skill. But to throw open the cell doors during a global pandemic, when your emergency rooms are crowded and they're trying to save those ER beds just for people that are battling this awful virus, why would you put a population out there that, may overdose? Now first responders, police, fire, EMS have to deal with that and take them to our ERs. It just made no sense, Michael. So that's the long answer of how did the COVID-19 impact sheriffs? It's impacted us dramatically.
Right.
It really has. And we're hoping that there'll be some federal money that'll come to the state for relief, because we had funds that we had to expend for our corrections officers. It's additional pay. I don't want to call it hazard pay, but we did increase the amount of salary they were getting, because they're coming in to a situation where it's really hard for social distancing in a house of correction.
Yep.
We've been able to, with the lower inmate count, do some changes in our housing so that most men now have a single cell. Okay. Those who are in double, they're bunk beds. So if you can imagine, two sets of bunk beds, we'll have one sleep head to toe this way, the other's the opposite direction, head to toe.
Gotcha.
One's on the top bunk, one's on the bottom. But inmates must wear a mask when they leave their cell. All staff must have a mask. Everybody gets a temperature check when they come in the door. They do a questionnaire, have they traveled, yep. Any, shortness of breath, respiratory issues, fever, cough, you name it. So we've been diligent about cleaning and sanitizing. But even with all that, we had a gentleman hold up a Cumberland Farms in Walpole. He was brought to us by Walpole PD, and he was already COVID positive. So it was inevitable that the COVID virus would get in, yep. And it did. And so, now we're managing that. We have a quarantine unit, and we'll get through it. But it's been a massive undertaking. And as Governor Baker and even the president said, these are uncharted waters. Nobody's got a playbook for this kind of global pandemic, but we've learned a lot from it.
Great. And I know you spend a lot of your time connecting with seniors, traveling around your district, connecting with seniors, speaking at the senior centers and the Council on Aging centers. And I know you obviously haven't been able to do that, but you're still working on doing that?
We are. So what we've done, Michael, is through Zoom conferencing, we've been able to get around to the councils on aging and connect with seniors. And this is a great tool because, look, a lot of our seniors feel isolated as it is. And during this pandemic, they've felt very alone and isolated and worried and anxious about the virus. So by technology, being able to reach into their homes and talk to them and assure them that, look, as a top law enforcement official in the county, I assure you, we're taking all the measures. We're going to keep you safe. We're working hand in hand with the 28 police chiefs. This has been great to get around to the seniors. We've warned them too, and I think it's our duty to warn them about potential scams. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, believe it or not, the scam artists never took a break. In fact, they immediately started with the stimulus checks. They'd call around to seniors, tell them that they were from the government. They were trying to expedite the check arriving into their account. Could they please get their check, check number, bank routing number and checking account number, and they would make sure that the money got into their account. So these bogus scams are always out there. It's sad. Even during the Boston Marathon bombing, when people open up their hearts and their wallets and they wanted to donate, there were scam artists swooped right in, took advantage of that crisis. So much like that, the COVID-19 crisis, the scam artists just saw a ripe opportunity to try to fool people. So through Zoom technology, we've got around to the councils on aging, warned our seniors, told them again, if anything feels suspicious, check in with the local police department, but never feel pressured to give out your private financial information.
Great. And I saw recently you stopped by and dropped off a thing called Files of Life. Can you explain what those are and where you've dropped those off?
So the Files for Life program, it's obviously a senior citizen can sign up for free, and it's got their name, their address, any medications they're on and the dosage, any allergies, any recent surgeries, implants, you name it, next of kin, primary care physician, whether or not they have a DNR, all that pertinent medical information goes in one neat little packet called the Files for Life. It's bright red. It has a magnet, goes on their refrigerator. That it has a duplicate that they carry on their person. So if they're walking to the grocery store, they're just out walking their dog or what have you. Why this is important, Michael, should they fall, they're unconscious, they can't speak for themselves. If there's any kind of a medical episode, first responders are trained when they come to your home to look on the refrigerator. If they see that File for Life on the refrigerator, they pop it open, they know exactly what medical attention they should be rendering to you specifically. God forbid you're allergic to certain medicines, or they can maybe better deal with what's happened to you based on your medication. They can see if maybe you've not been taking your medicine. And they can also reach out to family members, your primary care physician right away. So it's just really a good tool. It's free, and we encourage all our Council on Aging directors to work with Joe Canavan and make sure they have an ample supply of the Files for Life. And it's a great program, and goes kind of hand in hand with another program called IUOK.
And do you want to explain on that?
Oh, sure. So the IUOK program, it's a free service again. This is a partnership between Fallon Ambulance Service and the Norfolk County Sheriff's Office. And a senior citizen can sign up and have a phone call every day, maybe 3 times a week, whatever suits them, we can customize it. And it's between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. Let's say you're a senior who wants a call every day at 8:30 or 9 o'clock. We'll customize it. You'll get that call. It's a recorded message saying, are you okay? Press 1 if everything's fine, 2 if you need help. It's always monitored. If it's not Cheryl Bambury from our office, it's Fallon Ambulance employees. And in the 17 months now that I've been sheriff, we've had 12 saves. What happens, let's say, Michael, you're a 90-year-old gentleman. You live alone, but you have a grandson in New York. He can't check on you every day. We'll call you every day to see how you're doing. If you say you're not okay, we're going to dispatch an ambulance or first responder right to the house. If we call and you don't pick up at the designated time, we have the phone number for your backup person, your grandson who lives in New York. We'll call and say, did Michael forget to tell us, maybe he had a medical appointment or a dentist appointment or hair appointment, whatever. If that backup person says, no, my granddad should be there, we're going to call you one more time, just in case you're out front picking up the newspaper or in the bathroom. If you don't pick up, we're going to dispatch police, fire, EMS to your home to make sure you're okay. And what's happened in the past 17 months, we've had people fall, break hips. One woman had a life alert system, but her wrist was broken. The other arm was trapped under her body. The way she fell, she couldn't get to the phone. Another woman, God bless her, she went in to have a bath in the evening, but she hadn't eaten. She just became faint, weak, didn't have the upper body strength to pull herself up out of the bathtub. She was in the tub nearly 11 hours. And God knows what would have happened if we didn't call the next morning. In that case, she forgot to leave the designated key. We always ask for a hiding place for a key for police, fire, or EMS. So the police had to go in through the bathroom window. But we got her and we saved her. And the IUOK program, it's a phenomenal program. It's free. And again, if there is a medical episode, first responders show up, it's great to have the file for life right on your refrigerator. So if there's a language barrier or you are rendered unconscious, that little packet will speak for you.
And how can people sign up for either one of those programs?
If they want to email me directly, that's probably the easiest. It's jmcdermott@norfolksheriffma.org. Again, jmcdermott@norfolksheriffma.org. Or they can go to our website, norfolkcountysheriff.com, and there's all tabs they can click through there, and we can get them signed up right away.
Great. And now that the state's starting to kind of see their phased reopenings, how is that going to impact your department?
Well, as things begin to reopen, we're sadly expecting, as bars and restaurants open, there may be fisticuffs. There could be, people driving drunk. Sadly, that happens. The summer months, according to AAA, are the most dangerous months, particularly for young people. They're newly licensed drivers, but they're feeling exuberant. It's summer. They may have just graduated a new car or a new used car. Too many times it's people getting alcohol to minors, and they're celebrating, and we see an uptick in that. The other thing that's been very sad, Michael, during this COVID-19 is domestic violence. We have seen an uptick in domestic violence cases during this pandemic because when people were told during the state of emergency, the stay-at-home advisory, well, home isn't always the safest place for women and children. If there's an abusive situation going on. And now at our House of Correction, we have some high-profile cases where we're housing the abusers, and in some cases, it's a murder charge. It's been a very, very tough pandemic on a lot of people. And if you need help, we ask people to reach out to us, their local police, or check with the resources available through Dove, D-O-V-E. If folks go to dove.com, they're a great organization based out of Quincy, but they have folks that can come out, counselors. They can advise you, and they can do it very discreetly, so that if you're in an abusive situation and you can't speak freely on the phone, they can still work with you.
The last few weeks, there's been a lot of racial injustice and a lot of protests a lot around the country. Is that something you'd like to talk about?
Absolutely. This has been one of the most gut-wrenching times, I think, for everybody. When people saw the video of George Floyd dying, I don't think anybody, didn't get choked up, watching another human being have the life snuffed out of them. We'll find out when that goes to court exactly what on God's earth that officer was thinking. But I can tell you, as the sheriff of Norfolk County, every day I get dressed and I put my badge on. There was an old sheriff who I met when I was out in Colorado at the National Sheriff's Institute. And he gave a great piece of advice to all the new sheriffs. And he said, never tarnish the badge. And I think about that every day. I'd never want to bring dishonor to myself, my family, or the men and women that I serve in this county, or the men and women who belong to the Norfolk County Sheriff's Office. What that officer and those officers who stood by in Minneapolis did was outrageous. It was horrendous. And it gives all police a bad name. And as you see that our country, our city's basically burning with protests, I completely get the rage and the anger. Things have got to change. And it's sad that, the words of John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King and RFK still ring true today. But it's been justice delayed. So we collectively all have a role to play to make things better. Everybody should be treated equally. And that's not the case, sadly. I do think that if there's some good to come out of this, all police departments will look at their own training, and those who are not up to professional standards will work towards that professional development and sensitivity training, because we all probably have some biases that we don't know about. It's a healthy process to go through checking your own thought process and your biases. So that's maybe some good that'll come out of this, but it's awful that it took that incident for this country to, really revisit the issue of equal rights and civil rights for all. I can tell you my Norfolk County Sheriff's officers were horrified by those actions. But, most of the protesters we've seen in Norfolk County have been peaceful. We've been asked by different police departments to come out with our sheriff's response team, who are really well-trained when it comes to crowd control. And thank God we've had no violence. We've had no incidents. Many times my guys have been so professional, they'll just de-escalate a situation because if you saw them in their ninja gear, right? If you saw the tactical team, that can almost act as a magnet for the protesters. They see that and they want to engage. But the professional men and women that I have, they know when to de-escalate a situation rather than step it up. Most of the protesters we've come in contact with have been young people. In Brookline, 95% of the protesters were Brookline people. In Westwood, same thing. Medway, same thing. It's every town in Norfolk County has got their protest, and they're venting and they're saying they want change. In most cases, the police are 100% on board. Fist bumping and hugging with the protesters. In Quincy, I think I would have guesstimated about 4,000 people in Quincy Center. So I've been to most of the protests with my men and women just to make sure everything's running smooth and that they're safe. And my own daughter, one of my daughters made up a sign saying, history has her eyes on you. Or I hope I'm saying that right, but she's going to be 18 years old. She was really shook, as we all were, by the video of George Floyd's murder. And she's taken to the street to be a peaceful protester. And I said, all I ask of you is to always be respectful of the men and women in uniform, because they're as disgusted as you are by the actions of those few police officers. Most of the police protests have been peaceful. There have been some, obviously, the rioting, the looting, burning cars, smashing windows of stores. That's not solving any problems. That's uncalled for. And my sincere hope is that kind of activity stops and the peaceful protests can continue. I'd rather see the marches and the candlelight vigils. Those are going to bring about change. But the whole country, the whole world is looking at us right now. But defacing statues like they did in Boston, the 54th Regiment, an all-black regiment from the Civil War, to deface that, it's counterproductive, Michael. I don't know how that helps advance the cause of civil rights at all, but I think that's just indicative of the rage and the anger that's out there. Right? What I do worry about, and I know we may be running out of time, but what I do worry about is peaceful protesters. Their movement could be used by extremists on both the far right and the far left. And the FBI has put out warnings and bulletins to all law enforcement to watch out for just that. There are people here on our soil, and there are people around the world that would like nothing better than to exacerbate a tough situation and even make our divisions deeper and cause unrest and, God forbid, some type of a terrorist attack on us during these times. I mean, you see the large crowds in Washington, in Minneapolis, in LA, Miami. That's ripe for a terrorist from the far left or far right, or anywhere around the world. If they wanted to inflict damage on our country right now, we're in a pretty vulnerable position. So law enforcement, all agencies, federal, state, and local, have to really be sharp and on their toes right now. So please God, things get calm and peaceful, and justice is served.
And we'll do two more questions. Is there anything real quick that, since you've been to a number of the protests, that stood out to you in a good way? Is there any memorable moments in any of the peaceful protests that you went to?
Yeah, I would say that seeing the multi-generations, grandparents with their kids and grandkids up on their shoulders, that's really been, I just got a message. I got to click. It might have been on your screen.
Yeah, sorry, I just cut it off.
Just seeing the multi-generations out there protesting peacefully, the homemade signs, the diversity of the crowds, white, black, brown, yellow, red, everybody coming together to say, hey, look, we're all one race. We're the human race. So I love the signs that are positive and unifying, and I love seeing the multi-generations. In Quincy, I saw District City Councilor Brian Palmucci with his 2 little kids, his wife and his kids up on his shoulders, taking pictures, filming it, so that later on in life they'll remember this time in history.
That's great. And last, is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you want the people of
Sure.
North that are going to watch us know?
Yeah, just so the people in Norfolk County know, we've learned a lot from this global pandemic, COVID-19. I've put together what I call an infectious disease response team, and we're really going to be a pathogen response team. We're working with a renowned epidemiologist named Dr. Wirsell. So I took all the pieces that were here already, from environment to security, medical, mental health, and we're going to be ready should we have another wave of COVID-19, another surge in the fall, or if there's some other virus that comes at us, because we know it's going to happen. We just don't know when. So I really want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to be a resource to Norfolk County. And lastly, Michael, what I'll do with this infectious disease response team is I want to be a resource for the county, work with the local boards of health, and make sure we're all sharing best practices, so that whether it's our schools, our police stations, our town halls, or right here at the Norfolk County House of Correction, everything's getting sanitized. Our facilities, our fleets of vehicles, we want to make sure that everybody stays healthy in Norfolk County. So that's part of our role.
Great.
And with that, I'll just say thank you, and stay safe and stay healthy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on today, and I really appreciate your time.